So it's very complicated when you as a writer have something on your heart and you just know that this is a message that's got to get out there.
Right.
And then a publisher says, no, that's really not, we don't have the same vision, we don't have the right avenue for that. That message isn't going to connect with a large enough audience. So I definitely have heard that, even after becoming an author that was moderately successful.
Right.
But it's interesting, I do think we always need to listen to our publishers and what they have to say, because they bring a certain amount of expertise,
right,
and they can hold us accountable.
Right.
But while the experts in the industry can hold us accountable, they should never hold us hostage. So there is this tension to manage there.
What do you mean by hold us hostage?
Well, I'll give you a great example. My book, Made to Crave, if it weren't for one woman, my editor at my publisher, Made to Crave probably would have never come about, because a lot of the guys that gathered around the boardroom table making decisions.
Guys?
Yeah, a lot of guys, and understandably so. You know, I don't fault them, and I do trust the experts in the industry, and I have great admiration for the publisher. But they really didn't understand why a female Bible teacher would want to write what they called a diet book. Now, I knew Made to Crave was not a how-to get healthy book. Made to Crave was helping women find the want to, the spiritual motivation to get healthy. And but when I listened to some of the voices holding me accountable, which I valued that accountability, it started to hold me hostage. And halfway through the process, I called my editor and said, I'm writing the wrong book. I think they're right. No one's going to buy this book. I shouldn't be writing this book. It's going to be a colossal waste of time and money. And I had this panic in my heart. So that's what I mean. It's like the book had already been given the green light, but in the quiet space, that sacred space of writing, I heard the voices meant to hold me accountable, and they started holding me hostage, and I wanted to quit. And so that's what can happen with a writer very easily. But there was my editor, this one woman, she called me and I said, Sandy, her name is Sandy Vanderzeit. I said, Sandy, I think I'm making a huge mistake. And Sandy said, Lysa, this book is in you. It's got to come out. And I think it's going to connect in a big way. I think a lot of women need this message. So don't let people calling it a diet book hold you hostage. Keep writing, because you know it's not a diet book. Right. And then, funny enough, that was, I guess, for lack of a better term, that became my breakout book.
Right.
It took me from being a mid-level author to that book came out and stayed on the New York Times list for over 30 weeks.
How long ago was that book released?
That book was released about 3.5, 4 years ago.
Still moving.
Yeah, and it's still it is. Yeah. It really is. And my prayer for that book is that it'll be an evergreen message. But as the difference was, and this was the gift that the publisher gave me in forcing me to say, it's a hard leap, Lysa, to go from being a female Bible teacher to writing a book addressing women's issues with food. Big leap, because I'm not an expert in this area. I'm not a dietitian, right? But here's what I knew. I'm not an expert, but I have a lot of personal experience. And if I write this book from the authentic, raw, vulnerable place of understanding what it feels like to be a woman who steps on the scale and have this subconscious narrative running through my mind that this scale isn't just measuring my physical body in some wrong way. I think the scale is measuring my worth as a woman. And I think there's other women out there that struggle with that. So the publisher gave me a gift in forcing me to always advocate for the reader. And so they did hold me accountable. And it was my choice whether or not that accountability held me hostage.
Yeah, that's great. What about, you have a life as a speaker, and you also lead an organization. How does writing fit in sort of like all your, do you think of yourself as a communicator first and as a writer second? Is writing part of your communication arsenal? Which way does it work for you? You know.
Well, I love speaking, I love leading, and I love writing. And so when people ask me, what's your favorite, speaking, leading, or writing? I say, it's a bit like asking me which one of my kids I love the most. It depends on what day you ask. You know?
Exactly.
So there are some days that speaking is my very favorite.
Right.
And then there are other days where leading is my very favorite. And then there are other days where writing is my very favorite. And naturally, I am an introvert forced to be an extrovert.
Yeah,
so if you forced me to pick one of those, I would probably pick writing, because I can do that.
You're happy alone.
Yeah, I can do that quietly. And
so address this. I think people are fascinated. I'm cognitive of this, conscious of this reality that many public people are introverts. And almost the ones that are more public or more introvert, there's some range there. But I still think audiences or people watching find that, curious. I'd love to hear your thoughts about that, what that's like for you, and why you think it works.
yeah.
What you get out of the exchange of being in front of a large audience and then really being probably happier being alone in many ways.
Yeah, I need a balance, really. I know that my calling is to stand before people and proclaim the truth of God, and I know that God has gifted me in being able to translate experiences that I have and be a connector of truth to people's own experiences, and I'm a storyteller. And so I do love and appreciate the opportunity to stand before people. And if you're a communicator, you want an audience of some sort, but I've got to have those times where I recharge. And
that's where you recharge, is when you're alone.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I think that's really how you determine whether you're
Right.
an extrovert or an introvert. I can be extroverted sometimes,
Right.
but the ultimate question is, where do you recharge? Do you get recharged when you're with a whole bunch of people, or do you get recharged with a more intimate setting, maybe just a few people that you love the very most, or even by yourself? And I get recharged in the smaller settings.
Right.
I have some kind of awkward phobia of parties where all the conversation is very surfacey, and
Right.
that's just not my favorite kind of environment.
Right.
I would rather go deep with a few people that I know and love intimately, than have lots of surface conversations with people. That kind of stresses me out. So.
Yeah. Oh, it's a fascinating topic. It's kind of like telling extroverts to have a quiet time and introverts to be evangelists. It's like, there we go. Can I skip that part?
Yeah.
The New York Times bestseller list. I think this is sort of a mysterious thing to writers. Like, what does it mean to be on that list? Not just personally. I mean, certainly it means something personally. But what I'm more interested in, what does it mean professionally to be on the list? Because people talk about it as kind of like the standard that people use to promote their own books, and it's been New York, you mentioned, and we all sort of accept that. But does it in fact impact your professional life, exposure-wise, book sales, invitations to speak, that type of thing, as far as you can measure, or doesn't it? And then I have another follow-up question on that.
Well, here's the funny thing about the New York Times list. What I find fascinating is that the tiniest piece of real estate in one city's newspaper holds such accreditation, I guess. So it is quite fascinating to me.
Yeah.
I remember when I got the
Power of a
list.
brand.
Maybe it is a wonderfully powerful brand, but terribly confusing to me, really,
Right.
because I remember when I got the list, hitting the New York Times list was not on my radar. I never thought it was possible. I would have felt foolish even saying it.
Yeah, to admit it.
So I wanted to know that my books were impactful, but in my brain that meant hitting like the CBA bestseller list.
Right. Yes.
So hitting the New York Times list was not even in my scope of possibility.
Right.
And I remember when they told me that I hit the list, it was so strange to me and so unbelievable. I remember saying, "Are you sure? Like, have they made a mistake?" And then when I got the actual list, it's the tiniest little square.
Yes.
And I thought, so many of us writers work for the tiniest little mention in the smallest bit of real estate in one city's paper.
Right.
So while it is a wonderful...
Who does it have the most clout with?
Oh, who does it have the most clout with?
Is it really just with ourselves? Is it with publishers? Is it with...
Well,
is there a measurable difference in, professionally?
It's kind of like this. It's wonderful when someone who has compassion to help take care of other people, they go and become a medical doctor, and they have the MD after their name. And that is amazing.
Right.
And that is wonderful. And it provides professional opportunities for them that they wouldn't otherwise have. And it gives them a license of sort to be that kind of professional. But if you have compassion to care for other people, you can do it, not to the same level, but you can do it without ever having an MD, right?
Yes.
So that's the way it is with a writer. If you hit the New York Times list, and I say if you hit it authentically and organically, there are ways to...
there's ways to manipulate it.
Yeah, I think so. But it is a wonderful, I guess, accomplishment. It is. And it does provide you with a certain level of credibility and credentials and all of that. That's wonderful. But if you're a writer, you don't need to shoot for that in order to be an effective connector with people. And so it's great, but it's not the end-all be-all.
Right. Well, and this kind of segues into a question about how we manage or lead our life with Jesus and God while being public. And I call it public spirituality. And you're right in the middle of that with your life. When I talk about public spirituality, does it resonate with you? Do you think about that, like how you carry yourself, how you think about yourself?
Well, I've never heard that term before, or I've heard the words, but not put together like that. But it's interesting. I just had a wonderful conversation with Patsy Claremont yesterday, and I said, Patsy, you've been doing this for so many years. She's been a public speaker for a long, long, long time, and has accomplished speaking in front of more millions of people probably than most of us will in our lifetime. And I said, Patsy, if you were to give one piece of advice to people coming behind you in speaking and writing and leading and all of that, what would you say? And quickly, very quickly, she said, the human heart was not designed for fame. And that resonated with me so deeply, and I totally agree with that. And so while there is a public awareness when you step into the realm of communication, when you stand in front of people, they become more aware of you. So call it fame or call it whatever you want to, there is something that needs to be acknowledged and managed when it comes to the tiny little slice of fame maybe that this communicating adventure will create for each person. So
even small unknown authors can go do a book signing, and it's not everybody has the experience of people lining up to do that 10 people lined up to do your book can make you feel like temporarily that experience.
So here's I think fame can inflate your balloon and send you off in places you don't want to go, right? So if we do have even the slightest bit of that, we need to intentionally let the air out of that balloon a lot so that we don't get carried off.
How do you do that?
So we can stay grounded. For me, there's a couple of things. One is having people in my life that I give permission to speak freely to me. And
I call that walk-in rights. My wife has walk-in rights.
Exactly. And so having people in my life that I ask, what do you see that I might not see? Help me see it. In love, and maybe only one thing at a time, please, because a whole list might send me over the edge.
I'm gonna get that balloon out again.
So let's just let the air out of
Yeah.
just this balloon today, please. People in my life who have the permission to speak freely.
Yeah.
The second thing is when we are talking with people that that want to engage with us, we must intentionally value them as if they're the only person in the room. Now, this is complicated when, like, I'm at an event that has a lot of people, and there are a lot of people all around.
Right.
It's really, really easy to do this. So you and I are talking, it's
Right.
easy, to
Yes.
do this. But that is filling your balloon up. If you
Yes.
want to let the air out of your balloon and become authentic and not puffed up in that moment, then you focus on that person and you receive a gift that they want to give you. They want to tell you their story,
Right.
then listen eye to eye, authentically, vulnerably, and let them give you something so that you are basically communicating to them, I need you as much as you need me. And that will keep you grounded.
I think people would be interested to know when people line up to talk to a speaker after an event and they see them, is it your experience that most people want to talk about them? They tell you their story? Rather than say,
they do. They sometimes they'll say, your book has helped me
exactly.
so much.
Then they want to tell you about
But
their
they
story.
do want to tell me their story,
Right.
and I want to hear, because every story is a gift, and they get it. They're not going to be able to talk for
Right.
20 minutes, but what's the essence of your story?
Right.
I want to know. Or if people say, "Oh, I loved your message," or something, and I think that's so kind. But tell me what's one thing that that message spoke to you personally today?
Right.
I want to hear. So having people who can speak to you freely. Looking eye to eye and forcing yourself not to look around or not
Right.
to see a crowd, but to see an individual.
Takes a lot of work.
And be humble enough to receive what they want to give you.
Right.
And then the third thing is be a generous person with your blessings.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that my ability to write that somebody saw fit to put it in the package of a book and put that book out there,
Absolutely.
that's a blessing. So now I need to say, okay, who can I share this blessing with? Because when we share the blessings, when we share our secrets
Right.
of how we do this, when we love and give and be very generous with what we've been given, that'll let the air out of that balloon and keep us grounded too.